Neal, you feel that Labour needs to shift to the left. Do you think Gordon Brown's going to do it?
Well, I think we shouldn't have illusions about leaders, and neither should we just be kind of focusing on what they're going to do. I think we should be thinking about what we're going to do to try and create the conditions in which politicians go in the direction that we want them to go in. I've always found that politicians take the path of least resistance. Well, how do we build a body of ideas and organisation which Brown thinks that are more radical? And I think there's good grounds for that. The 5 million votes that Labour's lost since 1997 are all votes that have either from people who no longer vote at all or have gone to other parties that people think are to the left of Labour. Our voters haven't gone to the Tories, and they're one of the groups we need to recapture because they're worried about what we've done to the public services, they're worried about Iraq, they're worried about flexible labour markets, and unless he moves on those areas, then I don't think we're going to win people back.
I'm interested in this idea of the anxious middle classes that are almost in the same boat as the old working class because of the extent to which the top 5% have just moved so far away from society.
Yeah.
Do you think you can actually build a radical left-wing coalition around the anxious middle classes?
Well, I think there are real concerns. We've identified a thing called the social recession, where the prioritisation of economic issues has led to the undermining of social cohesion, and that's affecting people, right up the income scale, who are working harder than ever, who are anxious about their kids and their kids' education, that are worried about their pension, they're worried about house prices, they're worried about insecurity on the street. Now, all of those issues need greater public and state intervention to begin to solve them. Now, these are people who have got more money but less time. Now, there is a group at the bottom who have more time and less money. Now, there ought to be a way in which we can think of redistributing that imbalance across social groups to come up with a winning election coalition formula to see Labour, not just keep on winning elections, but transform the country after they've actually got back into Downing Street.
In terms of that theme, can you give me some specific policy examples of how that might be done?
Well, I think you could, if you wanted to imagine other areas. I mean, we've been at a meeting this morning where Tony Giddens has talked about a wealth tax. Well, that would be one idea of taking income from people who've got, much more than they can, on any basis, actually need, and then redistributing it down to the people who have got, much greater real needs. There are other ideas floating around. You could go for some kind of a luxury goods tax. What an interesting idea that would be, to begin to try and stop people spending money on, expensive Gucci handbags at £600, and ensuring that money goes into other places, for schemes like Sure Start. A living wage is another issue. We've got a minimum wage, but a minimum wage, certainly in places like London, isn't livable. So what's the point of it? Can we extend things like the minimum wage to things like something like a living wage in order to make sure that people at the bottom are getting the kind of life that we want?
Isn't there a problem with things like this luxury goods tax that in the era of globalisation, the rich will just go to France and buy their Gucci handbag, or to Spain or wherever else?
Well, I mean, the first point is that, I don't think people are as mobile as they say they are. Chief executives say that if you tax us more, we'll move our company offshore, and individuals might say they move. I don't think that happens anywhere near to the extent that the threat is. Of course, you're going to threaten that, and I think we should challenge that a bit more. But the other answer is that just as the Labour Party, and the left started locally, regionally, in cities, and then in nations, we have to build a global, and start with Europe, infrastructure to ensure that things like tax rates are universal, so that companies and individuals can't play governments and countries off against each other, just as we wouldn't want local employers to play workers off against each other. Now, that's a tall order, that's a big job. And it isn't going to happen quickly. But unless the left aspires to that kind of global architecture, then we're always going to be prey to the blackmail of companies and individuals that say, unless we get a zero tax rate, we're going to be off. And that's just unacceptable, because then we end up with this social recession.
And in terms of what you want to see from Gordon Brown in conference moving forward, do you feel that he needs to do more to listen to his own party and reconnect the party to grassroots?
Well, Well, he probably does do. I'm much more interested in what the party's going to do for itself to make sure that he does listen to him. You know, we disempower ourselves by expecting Gordon Brown to do everything for us. Actually, the question we should be asking is what can we do together, collectively, to give ourselves the power base that, you know, we're not just prey to, you know, whether he's woken up in a good mood or a bad mood and wants to listen or not, that he has to, that he's compelled to, that the strength of our ideas and the strength of our organisation is that he ought to come towards us and listen and come onto our agenda. So I'm much more interested in looking at that.